Good morning, wherever you may be, and welcome to this Somerville event, Two Distant Strangers, a conversation about race and film. I'm deeply honoured to host this event, especially at a time of great sadness, great frustration, one we've all watched in horror as events have unfolded in Minneapolis and the video footage of the child shot in Chicago. I hope that most of you, if not all of you, have had an opportunity to watch this extraordinary and unforgettable short film, which packs a powerful punch whilst delivering a very clear message. Some housekeeping first. This event is being recorded so that alumni who are unable to join us can watch it later. The panel discussion will last for about 20 to 30 minutes, after which you'll be invited to turn your camera on, should you wish, and to ask questions. I had the pleasure of meeting Somervillian Martin Desmond Roe during my last visit to the West Coast. If I remember correctly, he was on a mission to buy a suit for his wedding. Martin matriculated in 1997. He read classics, and he's the founder and creative director of Dirty Robber, an Oscar-nominated Emmy and Gold Lion-winning production house. Two Distant Strangers is his second Oscar nomination for Best Live Action Short, following 2012's Buscaggi Boys. I'm thrilled and delighted that the super talented Travon has made the time to join with us today. So thank you, Travon. He's an American comedian, actor, and writer with credits including The Daily Show on Comedy Central, for which he won an Emmy, and Any Given Wednesday with Bill Simmons on HBO. I'm also delighted to introduce Ella Rhode, who I had the great pleasure of meeting when she gave a talk in our college chapel to a rapt group of undergraduates. Ella matriculated in 2010. She read English language and literature and is a writer and actor from London. Her first play, The Phlebotomist, was nominated for an Olivier Award for Outstanding Achievement in the Philly Theatre. And finally, it's wonderful that Gabby Cook Francis can join us today too. She's in New York at the moment. She matriculated in 2019 and studied for her MPhil in comparative government as a Marshall Scholar at Somerville. But I'm super pleased that she's just accepted her offer to study for her DPhil at Somerville. And she also served as the Middle Common Room's Minority Ethnic Group representative until last term. Anyway, over to you, Gabby and Ella. This is going to be a great evening, I know, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Jan, for that incredible introduction. And thank you both to Martin and Travon for joining us for this really critical conversation. And congratulations, of course, on not only your nomination, but on making such a poignant and timely film. As Jan said, particularly after the recent police murders of Dante Wright in Minnesota and the 13-year-old Adam Toledo in Chicago, I'm just wondering, how do you think art can help us process the ongoing traumas that we're experiencing in this moment?
You're muted, Travon, and you have to go first.
No, it says I'm not muted. Am I still muted?
No, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. You know, I think art is important because it forces you to listen, and it's so different than when you're trying to have a conversation about these type of things. And you know, there are always varied opinions, but I think what's great about it is you get to hear what someone has to say in the way that they want to say it and in the way that they want you to experience it. And it's in through sometimes that interpretation, like with our film, that you hopefully come out on the other side where people feel like they've learned something or experienced something or even felt something that they've never felt before, engaging in that particular subject. And I feel like that's been, you know, a lot of our experience with this movie, which is people have, you know, who've been engaged in this conversation for years, for decades, come out of the other side of our movie feeling like they've heard something said in a way that they've not ever been, it's never been put to them before. And so I think it gives you the opportunity to speak with a new language that, you know, we all, as people who watch TV and movies, we know that language, our brain knows that language, but sometimes it's the best way to say something or to convey a message that you can't quite, just say with words.
And I would say that from my side, I think that, most art is aiming at universal truths. That's why we can watch films that aren't our race, gender, creed, and we can find messages in them that have meaning for our life. And I think that obviously one big part of the conversation at the moment is that representation matters. And I think that's often framed in terms of seeing yourself in works of art. But I think representation matters in the types of stories that are created as well, the sort of behind the camera, the writing, because whilst we're all aiming at those universal truths, there are a million paths to those truths. And, when you have new paths towards those truths, you've approached them from a different angle, you see different parts of them. And that I think is one of the most exciting parts of the growth of viewpoints from behind the camera.
Absolutely. And thinking about universal truths typically being expressed through drama or comedy, increasingly in recent years, we've been seeing the horrors of white supremacy expressed through Black directors' point of view on horror films. Even though this film is slated to be a drama, to me as a young Black American, it's certainly a horror film, not being able to get out of this really futile struggle that Carter goes through in the movie. Did you think you were making a horror film while you were shooting?
No, I mean, from a real life perspective, it is a nightmare for us. And so in that regard, the experience is a bit horrific. But we didn't think of it as a horror film when we were making it. I mean, we definitely saw it as a bit of a dramatic sci-fi kind of experience, but on a human level, because it's in its difference from the other Groundhog Day type films, this one is representative of a lived experience or real life experience. And so there is a horror in that when you walk away from this version of the Groundhog Day trope, it's not just a thing that gets left on the screen. It exists in the real world. And there are people who felt it and are feeling it. And in that regard, I was aware of the nature of that feeling and what it would be like for a lot of, Black viewers to come to the film with a more visceral understanding of the cycle than anyone else could.
I think one of the key differences between different audiences is their familiarity with the footage of the dozens and dozens and dozens now of murders, police inspired murders. I think that in white audiences it tends to run quite shallow. Most people will have seen some of George Floyd, maybe Eric Garner. That's about it usually. With white audiences. With Black audiences, the opposite is true. They are very, very familiar with these images. I, as part of putting this together, watched all of them, which was a horrific experience. That is definitely horror. And obviously, when you're recreating or taking inspiration from what is horror in real life, I mean, it's the moments of human horror, the speed with which they go from an administrative process, or what's supposed to be an administrative process, to murder, or at least a death, is horrific. A process thing I'll share as well is that, Travon wrote the script, and I don't know, 90% of what he wrote on his very first draft is what we filmed. But the question of tone when you're making a film is something that you work through the whole time. You choose what your tone is going to be ahead of time. And there's a romantic comedy aspect to some of what Travon wrote, right? Like, it starts in this very humorous, sort of affluent Black kind of sexy fun world, and then it goes into this very different space, and then it starts to ping pong between those spaces. And we played in post-production when we were doing it, we played with hyping those up, with choosing the funniest takes and the sort of romantic comedy stings, and then trying thriller horror music. And it was horrible. It massively accentuated the split on the first one. You were really laughing. You're like, oh, this movie's going to be hilarious. This is adorable. And then you were so traumatized by the first time it changed that we lost your trust, because it played like a trick. It played like we were, you know, when we realized that when we were dealing with things that were so closely inspired and so recently inspired, our entire tone had to strive for reality. So we actually even recut some of the romantic stuff to play more real and less funny. You know, the actors instinctively were like zinging on some of the jokes, and we're like, no, what's the realist version of that? And then that was the same way that we went with the way that we did the editorial and sound design and music design around the murders as well. Is that we were like, okay, let's just try and put us there. Minimal music, minimal sound design. Like, you know, it's sort of respect. You know, we knew it was going to hit. I mean, the first time we cut together, the very first time Carter dies, there was silence in the room. That never happens with chop the things together, the sand's jumping all over the place, nothing's smooth, right? But we were like, that's too much like these things that we see. And so we knew we knew the power that we had there, and everything had to emanate from that.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of thinking about how you're professionalizing, obviously, these horrible events, like, for example, the chokehold that's reminiscent of Eric Gardner, or the knee to the neck that's reminiscent of George Floyd. How did you navigate professionalizing these videos that are mostly shot on phones and that are shared and go viral into obviously now an Oscar-nominated film?
I mean, I think, well, for me, I've seen all of them, and I know some people opt out of that experience, and I deliberately choose not to, because from my perspective, I never want to not know what's happening to us. And I feel like the moment I remove myself from what's happening, it creates a space where you disconnect from it in a way that, you know, makes it easier to disengage. And so, you know, whenever I see those things, because I also spend a lot of time discussing the subject and the content of those videos. And so, you know, it's in seeing those videos and, you know, remembering them very well that, you know, it wasn't difficult to just recreate a couple of those moments. Even, you know, the seeing the police cam video of the raid on Breonna Taylor's house, and seeing, you know, we've seen Eric Garner and George Floyd, and we've seen Alton Sterling's video. Like, we've seen these videos where these things happen. And so, you know, we took as much of the realism from those actual incidents as we could. And then, you know, we had to be, you know, artistic and cinematic about it, because we were still making a movie. And the opportunity, the difference that we had is we had the ability to force you to feel, you know, a different level of emotion than, you know, watching, say, Adam Toledo be shot from like 15 feet away. You know, I can put you right there, and that feels very different. And so it was recreating them in a way that was reminiscent of what inspired them, but also made you feel like you were there, made you feel like you were in the moment. Because I mean, it's just so much more powerful in this recreation. And even on set, you know, when we were shooting those scenes, there was just a level of quiet and like heavy, you know, in the air during those takes that didn't exist in any other part of the film. Like, it was like we were having fun the rest of the movie. Everyone was buzzing and talking and laughing and having a good time. But when we shot those street scenes, it was you could hear a pin drop downtown LA, and that's difficult to do.
And I think that for me, the power, you know, the sort of unique power of film is, you know, it's your the subjective viewpoint that you take on. You become Carter. Doesn't matter who you are as a watcher. We're asking you to become Carter, and that's where the that's where the differential here is, as opposed to seeing these clips happening to other people. The projection here is that they're happening to you, which is obviously why, if you're very steeped in this visual language, it plays so horrible, so horrifically, as you said, like a horror, because if you're already half a degree of separation away from the feeling of these videos, if they're part of your psyche, then that extra step is very, very unappealing. It's like, what's the value here for me? But the other side of it is true, is that a lot of people are much further away from that. They view those videos as other. They watch. I had a shocking moment years ago. I remember Travon and I, he might not remember this, we were arguing late night one night. There's a video, it's another police sort of execution. It's in a Vegas hotel. I don't remember the gentleman's name. He's white. He's crawling along the floor, and he's crawling along the floor, and they've got machine guns on him, and he's doing everything he's told, and then they kill him. And I remember having a visceral reaction, because I remember that guy's white, and I processed that video differently. And that is just the truth. Like, and that's the difference between, that's my biases, that's my racism, whatever, however it needs to be processed. And, and that's the difference when you create something like this, is everybody is Carter. Everybody is, that's why Travon made him so as lovable, and Joey, our amazing actor, the struggle was to make this blameless, lovable dude, right? Who's like dorky and totally out of depth with this stunning woman and just loves his dog. And like, how he's just as sort of as every man a human being as possible. And the same with the nature of why he gets stopped. He's blameless, so that you can't have any of those conversations about, well, you should have done this, you should have done that, you should have done this. Well, they shouldn't kill him. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many tragic aspects to the story and to the film, but perhaps the most tragic is just the repetitive nature of Carter not being able to break out of the cycle of daily being executed by the police. So I'm curious, what does better policing look like to you? What does that road look like? Does it look like a reform pathway or an abolition pathway? This is obviously a very hot debate right now in the United States and around the world, and I'm just curious for both of your perspectives on it.
I think there is a heavy reform path to fixing policing. There are so many instances where police show up to places they don't need to be, especially with guns, whether it's mental health calls or your average traffic stop. Those things don't require someone armed with a weapon to show up. I think, the UK, even with all of its, its own issues, I think you guys have a little bit of a jump on us when it comes to, who shows up with a gun and who doesn't. And I think it makes a difference, because you think differently when the option isn't kill. When you don't have a kill option, you respond differently. And I think it requires us to create a system that holds, if you're going to have an armed response to all of these various situations at varying degrees of seriousness, then there has to be a level of accountability that, will hold these people accountable for their behavior with that weapon, because we've not created a system that forces them to think twice about shooting someone, because we know 99% of them have not been prosecuted. Like, it's a very crazy statistic when you say 99% of anything, but that's an actual number, where the number of cops who are arrested and prosecuted for murder is 1%. And the police here kill over 1,000 people a year. And that is something that we can put an end to. I mean, it's as simple as everyone deciding that the fact that the police kill 3 times more Black people is not acceptable, and it's not just a Black thing, but it's an American thing, then we can start to work towards correcting the problem that police kill people in general. Because the police, even if they show up and you've committed a crime, their job isn't to kill you. It's a kind of crazy phenomenon that we have in this country, where some people think the police are like a militant response arm and who can do whatever they feel is necessary to preserve their life. And we just have to start to figure out how to correct our, not only our thinking around policing, but, you know, the amount of empathy we have for each other in the conversation, because it's the lack of understanding and empathy that I think creates that divide when we have the conversation. And it's part of the reason why, you know, I wanted to make the film, is because when you come out of Carter's journey, I hope that what you feel is, I want that kid to get home. Like, I want him to make it. I want every Carter to get home. And so I think, you know, whether it's how people feel about reform or abolition, there's definitely a happy medium between, you know, creating a society where there are units who protect us from the worst of us, but are not killing people on a daily basis for incidents that we see that are clearly not incidents that needed to even have a gun in them, let alone, you know, someone be shot, like a 13-year-old boy with his hands in the air. We can do it. We know we can do it. And people are, at this point, are just refusing to.
I think for me, I'd say that I'll sort of give a cross-cultural to the story. I've been a lifelong fan of mischief and being in trouble. Jan's going to feel bad for inviting me right now, but like I was arrested a few times as a young man in England, and for various forms of mischief, and it was scary and unpleasant and certainly no fun for my mother. But I remember moving here and interacting with the police for the very first time, and I was pulled over for a traffic violation, and it was terrifying. It was just terrifying. It's a man over there with a gun, and they talk to you like, you know, and the two things, you know, just, it's a fun. I know that there's all sorts of problems. We actually did an interview with Channel 4 yesterday with Krishnan Guru Murphy, and he said that in England, the conversation at the moment was whether systemic racism exists as opposed to sort of the nature of policing. But I will, you know, and I think obviously but I will say that for all our policing issues, the fact that we don't have guns, the fact that it's not weaponized, the fact it's not militarized. When the riots were happening last year, I live in downtown LA and I live in a high rise. There were tanks parked underneath my building, like tanks, and there were soldiers outside with police badges on. Like it's hard to understand, you know, and this is the only time in my life I'd seen those people, but those people are deployed all the time to neighborhoods where people that don't look like me live. And so of course you have this centuries of resentment built up. And I think, you know, the weaponization aspect and the qualified immunity, which is what Travon was talking about there, which is the fundamental impossibility of prosecution. The female officer that killed Dante Wright, I believe she probably did make a mistake, and I believe she probably wasn't actively racially motivated, and yet she is contributing to the massive racially over-indexed Black death by police people. And if you in any other industry, if a nurse accidentally poisoned somebody she was taking care of, there would be repercussions. I don't know what those repercussions are. That's not for me. But the fact that there are never any repercussions mounts up, death after death after death after death, until you fundamentally lose trust, and you do not see them in any way as protect and serve. You see them as divide and conquer. I was really happy. Sorry.
No, yeah, I'm gonna jump in with some questions as well, and also, but first, I wanted to respond to what you were saying, Martin, because because I hear you. I mean, I haven't spent much time in the States. I'm based in the UK, but I think it's really, whilst having this conversation, it's really worth saying that whilst obviously the American judicial system is terrible, and terrible for many reasons, not just racial ones, though mainly, we do still have a lot of problems here, you know, with institutional racism in the police. And I actually think that the race report that's just come out compounds that, right, as a kind of it's a national gaslighting of the problem.
Racism, the racism. I don't know if you saw that, Travon. Like, racism doesn't exist in England. It does, we don't have it.
It's just told us all that actually racism doesn't happen here.
We sent it all to America. We shipped it off.
And I think that it's insidious. It's very dangerous. So obviously, whilst we're in many ways our police force, it might be less intimidating, and we do have like much lower gun use, which helps. I think that there is we have a huge problem with institutional racism in the police here, and it's and that whilst the film that you've made, which is incredible and so impactful, is very much an American film and about America, I think it really speaks over here, and I think that that it might be slightly different the way that it manifests in the UK, but it's just as effective. And one of the things that I found really disturbing, but obviously in a very impactful way about the film was that there wasn't just the violence itself, but it was actually the watching this man be caught in this kind of causal loop. And that was, for me, was just as disturbing. It was this idea of the psychological impact of it. And so from a formal perspective, I was really intrigued by the kind of algorithmic element of the story, and it reminded me slightly of shows like Russian Doll and some of these dramas which have used almost kind of science as a basis for creating narrative. And I was just wondering if stylistically you were inspired by any particular films or shows, or even theories, scientific theories, and from that, whether on how you have engaged with form to put across the message that you're giving.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the direct parallel went right back to the original Groundhog Day with Bill Murray. It was just being so familiar with that film and that trope, and also just I think I had seen Russian Doll. I didn't even know about Palm Springs until we were like in production. So I was like, oh, there's another Groundhog Day movie out this year. Excuse me. And so for me, the direct parallel went right back to the original film. I didn't really think much past it in terms of, knowing how that device worked, but then trying to figure out not only how it fit within telling this particular story with this particular issue, but in what ways could we, push it forward, or in what way could we use it and make people feel something about it that they'd never, even felt or noticed before. So it was looking for that pretty much for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's so effective, right? Because it's a familiar setup, but with a very different feeling.
Yeah.
For me, from an execution point of view, Travon agrees with me on this. So I'll speak for both of us. Sort of one director in modern cinema, Alfonso Cuarón, who's really sort of truly revolutionized the language of cinema, because there's this sort of, people, I think, even sort of people outside the industry are familiar with like the long take. There's sort of, you can have very, very showy ones, like the one that's in, the World War one movie.
1917?
Dunkirk, no.
Children of Men?
1917.
1917.
Yeah, 1917 wasn't the one I was thinking of, but that one's perfect. Where it's very showy, right? Am I still on? My camera froze. Can you still hear me?
We got you.
Great. That one's very showy, but what Alfonso does is you never know the camera's there. You never care that the camera's there, but you lose yourself in these moments. But he was ahead of this sort of understanding that cameras are everywhere, and then when you don't cut, when you live with the people and you're in those spaces with them, you have a different level of connection, because it's how we see the world. There's never a cut in our lives, right? There's never a cut in the way we view, and so we very consciously in all the romantic stuff, it's all very film, very studio. It's all like locked off cameras or sort of nice classic dolly moves, and as soon as we get outside, it's the longest single takes we could possibly do. where you are as close to Carter's POV as you can possibly be from the moment he meets Merck. And the idea there, was to what we talked about earlier. For your question, Gabby, it was how do we respectfully engage with the fact that this media is such a lingua franca within certain communities, but how do we add something to it that we can only do in a narrative construction, which is to truly try and first person, like remove any distance, like try and put as if you were standing there watching, how would it feel? That was sort of us. That was the response to the script that Travon wrote.
Yeah, I thought it was really, really effective. I felt so close to Carter all the time, like you were with him, and you liked him immediately as well. And that's partly, partly the writing and partly the directing and partly Joey, because he's amazing.
So lovable.
I wanted to kind of loop back to something that you mentioned earlier, but go a bit deeper. I found what you said about representation really interesting, and about how obviously people being seen is really powerful, and so important from a solidarity perspective to see your own struggles reflected in cinema. And I was wondering what your opinions are about the people whose struggles aren't reflected in this film. So the people who probably don't think about these things on a day-to-day basis, and how you are and how you intend to break outside of the echo chambers that we have within the industry, and to practically strategize so that you can make sure that people who might not be thinking about these things watch the film.
I think the most helpful thing that's happened in that regard is so many people keep telling other people to watch the movie, even people who I see a lot of people saying, I have to show this to people I know who need to see it, and you kind of have an idea who they're talking about. And I've had people who are more liberal than their parents, and they watch the film with their parents, and all of a sudden they're having a conversation with them that they've never had before, because their parents now see this particular thing in a light that they never saw it before. Because for them, each of these videos is a news of the day story, and they go on with their lives. But when you cut it all together and you see it all back to back, and you see the list of names and the things that they were doing when they were killed all in one place, it looks a lot more absurd, when you see it put together that way. And it makes you think about it differently, because that's how we've lived with it. Like, we don't forget. There's no gap for us between Breonna, George, and Elijah McClain, and Dante Wright, and Adam Toledo. Like, that is one long connected string. And for a lot of people who this is not their daily life or experience, it is as simple as it was raining on Monday and it's not raining on Friday, and the rain has passed, and now I don't have to carry an umbrella. I don't have to think about them. I don't have to think about an umbrella. It's the sun's out. And for us, we have not forgotten that it rained, and we're still our clothes are still wet, and we haven't had a chance to get to that next, experience, living a life outside of the bubble of, fear, or when or will this happen to me. And I think in seeing the film laid out the way that it is, my hope is that it pulls people into the space with us. It makes people think about the phenomenon differently, even if you don't necessarily agree on, what needs to happen with police or what the solution is. You need to be pulled into the conversation. You need to care enough about the conversation where if both of our goals is to get to 0 police deaths per year, we can debate on how to get there, but we need to be having a conversation about it. The conversation can't be, we're saying it's happening, I need to stop, and the other person saying, it's not a problem because all you have to do is these things and it'll stop. The conversation needs to be, how do we stop police from killing people, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, the onus being on the police. It's like, what is wrong with our police system that this is happening, rather than how can civilians behave differently?
Exactly. The people who show up to the situation with the gun, expect you to behave more calmly and rationally than the person, pointing the gun at you.
Yeah.
I'll say that societal change happens like a dam bursting. One piece of art, one op-ed, one government publication, none of those things. You have to have humility around each one of those and each individual action. But I was, when I very first moved to California, there was a big campaign to make gay marriage illegal, constitutionally illegal, which was defeated so strongly. Then it went to the Supreme Court and it became the universal law of the land. Like, societal change is possible, generation after generation. There's that amazing old science quote, right? Physics only change when old physicists die.
Mm-hmm.
I love that quote. And we're a short film, so I want to be super cognizant and humble about that. I mean, Travon's a lifelong activist in this space. I'm new to it, and obviously come to it from as a deep outsider. I am now American. After many years of resisting, I gave in, and I'm grateful to this country for the life it's given me. But LA, you jumped on, hey, things, just because that's not bad, things are bad. It's like that's the way progress happens. You can't resting on any sort of success can't undermine the need for the continued work. Hopefully, you can also appreciate the success so that it doesn't become a relentless litany of frustration for you as a human being. But you can't allow, take your moments, take your wins, and then you get stuck back in.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. You need to have, you need to fuel that fire with hope, and you get hope from wins often, or from other things, other sources. But you need to celebrate those small achievements for sure in political campaigning. Kind of on that note, I suppose it feels very significant that the film has been nominated for an Oscar, given the racial inequality that's been highlighted in the Oscars itself and the film industry, with kind of movements such as Oscars So White. And I was kind of wondering how you feel about the status of this is a big question, and I know we don't have much time, so don't feel you have to sum it all up, but where you feel the industry is at with racial politics at the moment, and how you see it moving forward. And I suppose I'm interested in that specifically in relation to this film, and whether you've had any pushback, particularly you, Travon. You've got a big presence in the industry, and it's quite a thing to put your neck on the line and be like, I'm making this thing and it's deeply political, and you're gonna have to take it. Like, how's that been?
Funny enough, I've not experienced any of it with the film, not in it from an industry standpoint. From everyone I've talked to, it's been a complete embrace of the film, and people saying that they're happy that the story's being told. I would imagine at this point, because of just the overwhelming love we've been getting, from our peers and from executives and studios and all the different industry people, that is someone who has a problem, they are not vocal about it, at least, or they have not told us. we've I've met with every studio in town for the last couple months since the film's been doing so well, and they've all just been like overwhelmingly impressed and want to like hire me and Martin to do other things. And from an academy standpoint, we, at least I can say I was not sure how it would be received. I was when we made the short list, I was very I was like, oh wow, like this feels different, because it on the surface it seems like a film that wouldn't be embraced with the historical knowledge of that body, but at every step from there to nomination, it seems like not only have our things changing, but the conversation is starting to change, and the way people think about film and storytelling from the perspective of non-white filmmakers seems to be changing. And I hope that this is furthering the ability for people to make and accept stories that don't necessarily come from your background or point of view, or even that you might even agree with in subject matter. But, you know, at the end of the day, we are artists, and they're, you know, a body who rewards craftsmanship. And, you know, it's a combination of the story you tell and the way that you tell it. And um, I think we kind of bridge both of those worlds pretty well.
Mm. Yeah, I agree.
Art competitions are silly, right? An art competition is fundamentally a silly thing. The films that were nominated, along with the ones that didn't make, that made the long list but not the short list. I mean, there's a certain point at which craftsmanship, there's a lot of great filmmakers out there who've made great films this year, you know, and I think it speaks to the nature of the conversation and the timeliness of the fact, and how seriously at least our industry is taking it right now. That, I mean, we are a short film, and the reach and visibility of this film outstrips even our, you know, even our wildest dreams, like, honestly. And we didn't have like super humble dreams going into it. But like I mean, I don't know, we were the number 6 movie on Netflix for a few days in a row, number 7. I mean, like these, for a short film, that just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And it's never happened. I've been involved in short films for a long time, and this is my second one that's been nominated for Academy Award. And, you know, it's a wonderful thing to, what Travon said right there, to be recognized for your craft. But I think it's another thing outside of that to be part of a social need. Like there's a lot of, when the trailer came out for the film, there was some resistance because people were like, whoa, what's this? There was a lot of suspicion. It just kind of came out on Netflix with no like understanding that it, you know, it was a Black filmmaker led independent film, that he was expressing something. It just looked like a sort of corporate voice. And then, you know, the most satisfying part of this whole process for me has been once the film came out and people could see it, the way even people who were initially suspicious, or, you know, just that, and the general tone has completely changed, and people, you know, see it as wrestling with this conversation, the most urgent conversation that America is having with itself right now. And that's an honor, honestly.
Yeah, it's huge. It's great. Like it's really amazing that it's doing so well, and I hope it continues too. I am feeling very aware of the fact that we've only got 15 minutes left, and I feel like I could keep on asking questions all day. I'm sure Gabby could as well. So I am going to, what's Dave saying? Dave's saying, hello everyone, thanks again for joining us today. We'll shortly be opening the floor for questions. So yeah, if you want to ask a question, then please raise a hand via the reactions button, and you'll be invited to unmute. And then we'll welcome you to turn your cameras on, and then you can ask the question in person. We don't have a huge amount of time, so we're going to have to be quite,
ask for brief questions.
Not lecture everyone. Gabby, do you want to kick off with the first question?
Sure, please. The first hand I see is Virginia Ross. If you'd like to turn your camera on and ask your question. Hiya.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming. I wanted to say that there's one man who seems to have done a lot of the training of local police departments for the past 20 years. And it's his philosophy of killing, which is called killology, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Dave Grossman is his name. And his bulletproof mind is teaching law enforcement agencies across the United States in militarized tactics, which officers are told to use to see themselves at war and not to hesitate to kill. Do you know what kind of opposition there is to Dave Grossman? I know that his courses have been banned now in Minnesota, but he's been terribly influential, and that's where we need to start, isn't it, with police training?
Absolutely, yeah. Unfortunately, there is not much opposition to him and the things that he teaches. I'm very familiar with him.
Yes.
There's no opposition to him that would be allowed the same equal platform, if that makes sense. The police departments aren't allowing someone to come in and teach de-escalation and tactics that make shooting the last resort in the same manner that they allow him to come in and teach them how to, kill at the drop of a hat. And I've seen some of the videos of his classes are absolutely insane. Like
Yes.
you can't believe that a person would be allowed to go into a police department and actually train cops to do the things that he's saying. But when you see it, it is a complete, representation of what the problem is. You know exactly why we're in the situation we're in when you see that this is what they embrace. These are the tactics they embrace. This is the mindset that they approach
Yes.
the streets with, where they're encountering everyday people who are just living life, who might happen to like change lanes without signaling, who might happen to, slow roll through a stop sign, who might happen to be crossing the street at the wrong place, and that turns into a deadly encounter.
Mhm.
Because in a way they're playing a video game with our lives. They see us, everybody's a threat, everybody's a target, no matter what infraction you might commit. And that's going to take a lot of work to undo. And as long as that gate is closed off to us, we would just keep hitting this ceiling, because until the wall is broken between being able to actually train police officers to not behave that way, to not see people as everyone as a threat, I can't even fathom how you begin to stop 1,000 people from being killed every year. I don't know how you begin to.
Yes, that's the impression we have. The first response is just to kill, eliminate the threat. And to be a predator.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, predicated on the idea of fear, where, police officers police departments and police unions especially want you to believe that no one's life is in more danger every day than a police officer, when in
That's right.
actuality, being a police officer is the 22nd most dangerous job in America. 22nd. The trash men are number 6, just to put it in perspective. Crossing guards are number 8, to put it in perspective. And yet so few of them die every year from encounters with civilians. Yet they want you to believe that at every turn they have to be afraid, when it is 18,000 police departments, and roughly a little under 100 cops a year are killed on the job, and a lot of those times it's not even because they were killed by someone in the commission of a crime. And I think there's like, I forget the exact number. There might be 7,000 or 7. I forget. There's a very large number of police officers in the country, and the percentage of which they are killed is so small that they have one of the safest jobs in terms of what they're doing out there every day, relative to so many other people who are doing jobs that require no gun, that aren't even involved in any level of apprehension of criminals. But if you talk to people in society and you ask them, where do you think a police officer ranks in the most deadliest jobs in America, I guarantee you everyone will rank them in the top 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's all the perception, that's all the perspective that they've created around the job, around the profession, that allow them to use that fear to get legislation passed to protect them from different things, have qualified immunity, all these things that protect their, institution, that we have no way of combating.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Kim Anderson with a question. I'm just going to unmute you. And if you fancy turning your camera on, then do.
Thanks. It's really interesting. I'm afraid I haven't seen the film yet, but I was in San Francisco about 18 months ago, staying in a hostel, and couldn't believe every morning when I came down, there was another story of an innocent Black person being killed by the police. And I happened one evening to staying in the room a lovely Black Canadian girl who'd come down from a conference into America. And she was telling me that one of the problems, it sort of follows on from Virginia's observation. She said a lot of the police are ex-military, so they are trained automatically to shoot to kill. And she owned a property in the Midwest of America. and she wanted to sell it because she said she felt incredibly uncomfortable as a young Black woman in America. And the estate agent had asked her to meet him, check the house was okay, and she said, I don't want to do that. I'm happy for you to send me the keys when you've sold, take the keys, send me the money when you've sold the property. She didn't feel comfortable basically traveling even to visit her own property. She just wanted to get out. But I was interested in this remark about a lot of policemen being recruited from the military and shooting to kill, because you don't seem to see them shooting in an arm or a leg, which isn't great anyway, but it would be obviously a bit better for the person they were tracking. So I don't know if that's also the case, that there are a lot of ex-military in the police.
Yeah, there's definitely a crossover between, people who come out of the force, out of the service, and they have an easy transition into becoming law enforcement. And, our police officers are trained to aim for center of mass. They are trained to shoot you, to stop you in your tracks, to almost certainly kill you. And, it's funny, I was having a conversation yesterday with another filmmaker who is from Israel, and we were talking about what's been going on, and he was saying it's kind of crazy that the Israeli military is trained even in combat that their first shot be to the leg or non-lethal before they shoot to kill you if they engage in combat, and yet the police in America are trained to shoot to kill you with the very first shot that they take. And the reason that the excuse that they'll often give for why that's not the case is because they'll blame it either on their ability to shoot a limb, which I think that goes back to training. If you can't shoot someone in the leg, you shouldn't have a gun. You shouldn't be out policing people.
You can't aim your gun. You probably shouldn't have one.
Exactly. If you aren't aiming, you shouldn't have it. And also, they try to brand it as it's inhumane to shoot someone, in a non-lethal place. And it's crazy to say that, like, oh, if I shoot you in the leg, I'm being mean. But if I shoot you in the chest, I'm doing my job. And so much of this comes back to the elephant in the room of America, of gun control generally. You live in a nation where guns outnumber people, right? And there was that, we don't know if you guys follow it here, but the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, there was, I think, six or seven blood clots, and so they stopped doing it. And then in 90 seconds, 8 people were killed in Indiana with a machine gun the other night, and there will be no change to the gun policy, right? Like, stopping hundreds of millions of people potentially getting a vaccine, but we're not going to do anything about, I've lived in two countries primarily in my life. One where the gun is a bizarre object that exists largely in movies, and one where you see it when you see every police officer you meet has one. And the psychological difference in that, like, to the carrier as well as, yes, over time they have become increasingly militarized. They have fallen in love with an image of themselves, right? And and some of them do die on the job. You see the horrific footage. They have their own version of this footage, right, where they see themselves killed over and over and over again, and they obsess on those videos because it happens, and it must be terrifying. But again, it's projected all out of control, and when there's no meaningful movement towards the maintenance and control of an AR-15 or whatever it's called, of things that can kill 100 people or whatever they shot at that Vegas festival. It's the elephant in the room of all of these conversations, because it just, everybody shouldn't have these things. I don't think, I see no reasonable argument for the proliferation of weapons like we have in America. It just makes no sense. And it makes every conversation almost impossible, because if you've got an original sin underneath every piece of conversation like that, the logic towers you build on top of it crumble for me.
Thank you.
Well, I think we have time for one more question from Matt Phipps.
Hello, hi. First of all, just thanks so much for that. I just think the project's really brilliant and harrowing, and Yeah, it was really, it's amazing. I did want to ask one question related to the plot, because I just wondered whether you ever debated having an alternative exit strategy from the time loop, i.e. one in which, and this is a bit of a spoiler, so apologies to anyone who hasn't seen it, i.e. one in which the cop isn't deceiving Carter, or was that refusal of progress or resolution something that you baked into the concept from the start? Just because, and I guess the reason I'm asking is because the dynamic between them, you do so well to make that feel so warm, that I guess part of the viewers, maybe you're sort of not taunting, but you're sort of tantalizing the viewer with this expectation that maybe there will be some escape and resolution from this nightmare.
Yeah, so the idea behind that is probably, from my experience, based on a more American phenomenon of having the police come to Black and brown neighborhoods and engage in these community programs where they like play basketball with you, or throw water balloons with you and shoot water guns and do all these things, where under the idea of if the police just got to know Black kids better, they wouldn't kill them. And it's been proven to be, it doesn't stop the police from killing people in the same neighborhoods. What it does is it gives the police, more PR cover to appear as if they're making an effort to do more to stop engaging in Black and brown communities a certain way. But in actuality, I've never seen in my life the police need to go to a white neighborhood to better understand white kids and white people to not kill them. It's never happened. It doesn't happen. And I think the idea that people would think Black people are so different, so disturbed in our behavior and in our ways, so misunderstood, that the only way to not kill us is to gain proximity to us and like experience us in our natural habitat, and then you'll understand us better, and then you won't have to shoot us. I think it's crazy that a police officer can't just not kill someone, no matter what color they are, if they just would engage them in a certain way. And so that whole section is a setup to knock down that idea of, oh, well, maybe if we just get to know each other, then we don't have to behave this way towards each other. And I like what Gabby, actually, what you just said is exactly it. It's white people's humanity is assumed, Black people's humanity has to be proved. That's the beautiful summation of what I was trying to explain. And so in that moment, what I'm saying, what I'm communicating is just that. It's even when we do I'll just try to get to know you thing, it's still, the end result is the same. And so it's really just kind of, dispelling that myth.
I think that, bear in mind when this was written in literally the days after George, when our country was tearing itself apart over this issue. And my wife's just come home. Wellington's very excited to see her. And one of the things we were wrestling with in our industry is the way that we portray the police in cinema and film, especially here. They are by and large glamorized. I mean, there is one wire and there are 1,000 procedurals where being a cop looks cool, And I think that there was a very conscious choice on this one, that the Black character is fully rounded and is a fully functioning human being with wants and needs and goals. And the cop, you come to understand, but what you come to understand is, a representation of the worst of the worst. That was, the worst of the worst don't get portrayed very often, but they sure as hell exist. And that was a conscious choice here. We're not looking to tell the story of every single one. We're telling still this story keeps happening. So it's not individual cases. One last thing I'd say before, I know we're running out of time, but this is something that came up for me. I think that goes into the root of the whole film, which is that we live in an era, and it's about film. We live in an era where we see death. We see not stage death, we see actual deaths at a scope and scale that I think the human mind is finding hard to process. I think that just as Twitter is proving to us that living in a constant state of argumentation is not something we were built for, you can go into that vortex and literally never come out of it. We are seeing things that would only ever have been oral stories 20 years ago, 30 years ago, right? And that's, I also think that's part of the power of our film, is that we're wrestling with, there's a new, one of the lines that gets used is the racism hasn't changed, they're just filming it more. But I think the brutality hasn't changed, we're just seeing it across all spectrums, across every area where it happens. And I think that's hopefully a positive thing, because when you see something, you can deal with it. But it's definitely, I think, one of the most, it's the part that cinema never used to capture about policing. But it's not that the police got brutal when we started having body cams and we started having phone cameras. It's that we started seeing what it looked like when the police interact with the people that they are policing.
There was another thing too that, I think I encourage people to look this up. A couple weeks ago, there was a video of a police officer who was a K9 officer, and he got out of the car, and his K9 got out of the car behind him on his own, and the officer turned and shouted at the dog, and the dog stopped in his tracks, and he ran over to the dog and picked him up by his neck on the collar and slammed the dog against the car door. And this is all caught on video from another cop car. And the two cops in that car are laughing at what he's doing to the dog and telling each other to make sure that the cameras are off, and joking with each other about their cameras. They thought the cameras were off, and they're laughing and joking about the cameras being off. And he literally says to the officer, "It's okay, no, it's all good, no one can see you," while he's slamming a dog, a canine dog, which by their own rules is a deputized member of their police force, slamming the dog against the car door and then throwing the dog in the backseat of the car. And when I saw that, when you combine the idea that they thought no one was ever going to see this, and they were doing it to a dog, what do you think they think and feel when they're engaging with people, especially when they think no one's looking? If you would do that to an animal, a helpless animal, whose only job is to serve you, is to respond to your command. I mean, that to me, of all the, promise and hope and, everything we had built up over the course of, talking about this film, it robbed me of most of it, because I just couldn't believe that anyone would treat an animal that way, let alone, these people who are supposed to be protecting and serving. And so, that I don't know how you square those two things, where we have this great expectation for police to want to treat humans better with more empathy, when that's you have that lack of empathy, that little bit of empathy for an animal. And
canine reference, right?
I mean, I think I would imagine there are a lot of animal pet owners on this call. And I mean, when I did have a dog, just accidentally stepping on his tail would break my heart. Like just hearing, him like even cry for a second. And so that to me just makes me feel like we just have so much work to do. We have so much work to do. And I hope we keep having these conversations because of it.
I recognize that we are a little bit over time actually right now, and I don't know if you both can stay, but if not, I just wanted to thank you both for just an incredibly profound and resonant conversation, and really getting us started on starting the work, at least, that we all need to do. So thank you very, very much. And if everyone would just give a round of applause for our fabulous, fabulous, fabulous presenters and speakers. Thank you so, so much for everything.
For listening.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you both. What a pleasure. What an absolute pleasure. And I think it's just testament to the film that we could speak about it for hours, you know, that there's so much to chat about, both kind of formally, industry-wise, politically. It's just like, it's big.
I can see Leslie Brown there. Hello, Leslie. She was my teacher.
You have more time, Martin?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm not got any. We've got a Netflix are doing us a toast for all their Oscar nominees in 40 minutes. So until then, I'm good.
Can I just say, because I've got to go to something else, but can I just say that thank you to Travon, to Gabby, to Ella, and of course to Martin. I mean, that was just such a fantastic conversation. Travon started by saying that art forces us to listen, to which I would say, thank God, because as Ella said, this film really does speak to us in the UK, where there certainly is institutional racism, as well as in the US, where the facts and figures about police that you've given us today are even more horrific than I had understood. I think that as you both said, the familiarity of watching news footage of death of dozens and dozens of white on black police murders is terrible, and we have become desensitized. And with this film, you forced us to feel the horror and to have the difficult conversations that have to be held. We all became, or we will become, Carter, whether we're black or we're white. And the fact that you list the victims at the end of the film, I think reinforces our hope that every Carter can go home safely, as you said, Travon. The film is hugely powerful, and I hope that the empathy that it produces, because it does produce empathy, and I hope that that will influence all the arguments that are taking place, and that will lead to change actions and accountability by the police in the US. So I just say an enormous thank you. Goodbye from me. Keep on the conversation. And my God, you're doing a brilliant job. And we're going to be cheering on the 26th when I hope to goodness you get an Oscar. So thank you, and bye-bye from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. And if you guys want more information, the site I just dropped in the chat is a really, really great resource for police violence statistics in America.